Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Game On session at the Festival of Innovation. I am really excited to be joined today by Mario Centola, Brent Bushnell, and Rick Briggs. I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation. So let's start with some introductions. Mario, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Chuck E. Cheese, please?
Sure. I am the Chief Operating Officer of International Operations at Chuck E. Cheese. So we have really locations in about 16 countries and territories. So I spent a lot of time on the roads internationally and focus on managing those locations and expanding the brand. I've been with the brand for about 3 years now. But I have to say, I've been in the entertainment industry since I was a teenager. So now I just say for many decades, now to make it a little easy. But it mostly in the theme park business. But this is what I've made a career of.
Fantastic. And Brent, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with DreamPark at the moment?
Sure. Yeah, Mario, it's not so good counting the decades after a while, right? Yeah. Yeah, my name is Brent Bushnell. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been building attractions for many decades. And currently co-founder of DreamPark. We're using mixed reality, the Quest 3 headset to be able to overlay worlds on just about anything. I think of it as an all-terrain theme park. We can turn a parking lot, a walking mall, a mall common areas, you name it, into a ginormous magical adventure.
Fantastic. And Rick, can you tell us a little bit about FuzionGamz and what you're working on?
Well, I didn't realize the connection between these two guys until I kind of put it together there. So you guys didn't say anything about that, how Chuck E. Cheese has to do with the Bushnell family.
I did go to some openings of Chuck E. Cheese like in the 80s.
That's a cool one. So I'm Rick Briggs. I've been a theme park and attraction designer for the theme seems to be decades of this experience here. I started out in water parks in the 90s, designing interactive water play and developed the giant dumping bucket that's become an icon in the water park industry. Also did foam factories, dry innovations for Six Flags and Universal Studios. In 2000s, I moved to basically interactive gaming and technology, and we built the world's first live-action interactive game called The Barn, where kids put on RFID bracelets and we tracked them around a 4-story space. A few years later, we developed Magic Quest, which is the first retail interactive experience with a magic wand.
Awesome. It was so awesome.
Yeah, we worked together on that a little bit. Brett was on our board of directors for a while. Since then, also did the first water slide game, a video game, which we took basically an inner tube and put game controllers on it, X, Y, A, B coordinates on it to interact with the slide as you go down. After that, we did dabbled in VR with the water slide, doing a VR game. So really technology and gaming has been my experience for the last 15 years or so. Now, a couple of years ago, started FuzionGamz. FuzionGamz was inspired by my many visits to Great Wolf Lodges, who I love, we all love, because they're so hyper-realistic, and to Imaginariums with their giant screens that are so cool and immersive. But to me, those were lacking interactivity. I wanted to bring interactivity to those giant screens in a hyper-realistic way. So FuzionGamz, we combined video game technology with large screen projection technologies together with laser tag, together with escape rooms. So it's a fusion of all of those gaming experiences.
Wow, so much experience from all of you. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about some trends that you're noticing. Mario, one that I'm really interested in at the moment is this idea of nostalgia. And I think that's quite well kind of, amplified with the new Chuck's Arcade that Chuck E. Cheese has got, which is specifically aimed at adults. So can you tell us about Chuck's Arcade and, this idea of nostalgia and how that sort of played into the, idea behind an adults-only Chuck E. Cheese area?
Certainly, yeah. It's a unique story because initially we were saying how can we take the experience, the decades that we have, almost 50 years of brand equity kind of outside of the traditional box of a Chuck E. Cheese. So we looked at doing arcades in hotels and in malls. As we launched in malls, maybe we didn't get overly creative. We were saying, well, we could use the Chuck E. Cheese name, but that really would only resonate maybe to a younger audience. How can we broaden it? So again, not overly creative. We launched with Fun Spot Arcade. And that was the name that we used for at least half the units that we had built out. And then as we did research, and we spent a lot of time doing research, we found that it was amazing when we put names in front of people. The nostalgia aspect of Chuck E. really came into play. So then we tested Chuck's Arcade in terms of branding, and overwhelming response in terms of the audience. It resonated more than any other type of name or concept that we put in front of them. So then we decided, as we were about to open almost our 10th location, to rebrand all of the locations, kind of roll the dice to Chuck's Arcade. And ultimately, without doing anything else, nothing else has changed inside the box. We immediately saw an increase in sales. So the brand certainly helps, the tie-in, in the fact that, almost 50 years, you now have multiple generations of people familiar with the brand. This is just a brand extension. People kind of know what Chuck E. Cheese is about. They know that we do arcades. We're one of the largest arcade buyers in the world. So they have faith in terms of the brand. And we were able then to really attract the older demographic that we were really kind of shooting for in the mall space versus who would come to a traditional Chuck E. Cheese. So it worked out very well. We're very pleased, with that launch.
Mario, I think what you guys did with Pasquale's Pizza in the pandemic was freaking genius. Creating that brand, having people able to, do it over the takeout. Did that check the same sort of nostalgia box?
Yeah, it's we kind of go back. We have that rich history in terms of having the IP, and the question is, how can we leverage it? How can we do more with it? So Pasquale's Kitchen, we've always been a part of the Chuck E. Cheese brand. Taking that and then leveraging that into kind of the delivery concept, it was kind of a no-brainer, and it did resonate well. Initial, I think the responses is this really a Chuck E. Cheese pizza, disguised, but it was totally different. And I think it kind of led the way for multiple other brands in the space to kind of have the ghost kitchen concept and really being able to survive during the pandemic, for sure.
I think you guys are also sitting on a gold mine in the characters, for what it's worth.
Yes, we're really leveraging that. We have a new concept that we launched a couple of weeks ago, Adventure World, Chuck E. Cheese Adventure World, and you're going to see a lot more representation of the characters front and center in terms of that concept.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned as well kind of the IP, and obviously you've got the IP of the characters from Chuck E. Cheese. But when you're kind of thinking about what are you going to be putting into Chuck's Arcade, are you thinking about different IPs to what you would put in a standard Chuck E. Cheese to attract a different audience?
I don't know, in terms of that concept, if you would see a variety of other IPs. I think it stands on its own very well, playing on the nostalgia. We actually have created some merchandise that kind of goes along with it, that has kind of the older, more nostalgic logos that we've created and crafted. So I think that in itself, for that application, kind of stands on its own. But I think as we do other things, Adventure World being one of those, we have a little more liberty to kind of leverage IP characters and do more cross promotion, for sure.
Fantastic. Brent, you talked a little bit about how DreamPark, can transform spaces into a kind of really fascinating, interactive playground. Do you think that nostalgia is playing a role in adults wanting to kind of step into this fun playground? Or are you finding that actually it's a real mix as well of like families kind of coming along, or, you know, who is your audience that you're finding?
Nostalgia is 100%, at play here. And, the huge thing for me is it's about embodiment, so, the entertainment we all grew up with was most likely passive at first, right? You're reading, you're watching a movie, you have no control over the world, and it's over there. And then video games gave you some control with your thumbs, still the world's over there, but you got some control. And that's the nostalgia we think of, right? Those classic titles, Pac-Man and Zelda, and, but you were controlling the character over there. And I think the thing that we can now do today is make you the character, right? The world is all around you and it's your body moving around. You're, how tall are you? How high can you jump? All these things become important. It's not just, can you click the right button? And so I think the fun part is being able to sort of step into the worlds you might have nostalgic awareness of, but now be the character that you used to just control remotely.
I would say it goes a little bit further to the extent that you don't need kind of that physical box either, the way you're executing it, and where that is sometimes such a barrier. Basically you have the ability the portability is really kind of I think a unique selling point of what you're doing today.
Well, Mario, I'm psyched to hear you say that, because I've really felt like it was an all-terrain theme park, like we can sort of put it just about anywhere, and I think that has been an interesting thing. I started building VR in 2012, 2013, and the amount of infrastructure and preparation you needed to immerse someone. You needed ginormous multi-thousand-dollar computers and cables and confusion and controllers that losing sync and external trackers and sort of all this stuff. And to think that you can now, with just this one device, hold it to your face and be off and running the size of a football field, is just such a watershed moment. And the amount of it boggles the mind, the kind of creativity you can do once, to your point, Mario, you don't have walls to worry about. You don't have this kind of traditional constraints. I mean, we ended up in bizarre relationships with landlords because we have no capital deployment, and so it's like, at least didn't even make sense. They were like, well, I guess you're a partner. We were like helping to drive traffic. So it's really, it really turns lots of models on its head.
I think your mention of the history of video gaming, Brent, was right on, in how it creates nostalgia through connection. That's where the multi-generational connection that we all seek today, both as parents and grandparents and designers and builders and operators. It's getting that multi-generational connection. And because we were lucky enough to be, at least I was, a baby boomer when Atari first started and the first Zork computer games came out, that got me hooked on it when I was in my young 20s. And then I watched as my kids got hooked on Super Mario Brothers 3 and Pac-Man, etc. And now I watch as my grandkids get hooked on Fortnite and all those. It's really all the same thing. And it's amazing how similar the games are that we're all playing, with just different facades on them. And that is really a connection that I can relate to with my grandkids coming in and want me to play a first-person shooter. I can never beat them, of course, but I can sit down and relate to Doom when I played Doom scrolling around the screen, decades ago. And so that's the connection of the nostalgia, I think, that really works for gaming, and why video gaming is still the number one. It grosses more than movies, FECs, theme parks, all of that combined together. And it also has a reattachment part to it too, where people come back to it again and again. You don't just play one video game and then leave and then go back a year and play another one like you do at a theme park. You play multiple times a day, a week, etc. So
yeah, I love that.
History is important to the nostalgia.
And I think you nailed it, this multi-generational, and especially those earlier games that were easy to learn but impossible to master. It's like it can cut across 4 generations, and everybody can sit down and play this thing and understand it, and that's a powerful. Yes. There's not a lot of stuff that can do that.
Yes, and whether it's how Mario puts different games in the arcade for different ages, or how you and I design something, Brent, so that a 5-year-old will be just as engaged as a 12-year-old, as a 28-year-old, as a 30-year-old. You put all those little Easter eggs and little components together, and that's where today we have the capacity of doing that so much bigger than it's ever been done before.
Yeah.
This is so interesting to me because I'm quite a new gamer. I've sort of only really got into it in the last year or so. So for me, actually, a lot of games that I'm looking at, getting used to the controllers is really challenging because I didn't grow up doing it. And so it takes me a while to get the hang of it. Whereas what you're offering is this kind of more interactive way of approaching this incredible IP and incredible experience where I don't need to necessarily worry about which button am I pressing, especially if I'm switching between different consoles and it's different buttons. And that's really confusing for me.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a really important thing with interactivity and bringing the different generations together. As you said, Rick, like if you can make it a bit simpler, then you can bring people together a lot more easily. What challenges have you noticed, Rick, with designing for these different age groups?
I work a lot at making something so simple that anybody can do it. Whether it's pointing and clicking at a spider on a wall in a haunted room, and you can just do that all day long and score points for it, or whether it's going on a mission to earn special haunted powers that takes you 15 minutes, or whether it's battling the big boss where you have to have multiple powers. You make it accessible at any level that the player wants to play it on. And a big change that I've made in the last couple of 3 years or so relative to video gaming and understanding gaming was getting in the escape room business. Escape rooms really made it big and have grown a lot in the last 12 years. And they kind of prided themselves on people not getting out, or a small fraction of people getting out. Can you be one of the 20% who get out of the escape room? To me, that's like a fail. Everybody should enjoy the success and the reward of completing the challenge and getting out and winning the game. To your point, Alice, video games have to be complicated to an extent so that not everybody wins real easy, because you can just pick up your phone and go back and play and play and play again until you finally win. But when you go to a physical facility like a Chuck E. Cheese or any FEC, you generally have maybe an hour or two, and you want to leave, or an escape room, definitely. You want to leave there feeling successful on all of those levels. Like your 7-year-old had just as much fun as your 15-year-old, as your 20-year-old, et cetera, et cetera. And that's our challenge as designers, is making that happen. And I think Brent, as much as I do, loves that challenge because we play it and live it with our families all the time. Yeah. So sorry you weren't able to. Sorry you're getting frustrated in the game, Alice, but you'll get there.
You know what? I'm lucky. My fiance is really patient with me, so we play 2-player games. He's like, it's fine that you died for the 15th time in a row. We can keep going. And they're like, but it's not okay. But it is okay, and it's a process that I'm learning to enjoy. But I'm having to learn to enjoy it as a perfectionist.
That first play, we're talking about that first play a lot, which is a really important thing. You're learning a lot in that moment. If you are in public, you're really a different person than if you're in private. And Alice, to your point, when there's a lot of complicated buttons and whatnot, it takes some time to learn that and understand what does what and how it all works. And, if you're in public on a date or with your friends or whatever, you don't have time to piece that stuff together. And, it's a much different constraint in public, getting people sort of up and running and on board quickly, as few menus as possible. How do you get them in and having a great time? We often think about win and win better. It's like, Rick, to your point, you're going to get to some conclusion, but if you tried really hard, you're going to do better than if you did a terrible job. And we had a joke in at 2-Bit that, you could do this one spaceship and you could have mission success, or you could have mission success. and we managed to sort of make a joke out of, people losing at it.
No, that's perfect though. That's perfect. That's what it should be.
And I guess, as well, you want some level of repeatability, don't you? You want people to have an enjoyable enough time that they are going to come back with a different group of people, with the same people. So they have to be able to understand it easily enough the first time. Otherwise, they're going to get frustrated and then go, that was a waste of my money. That was a waste of my time. Why would I go back and do this again?
and there's really two buckets, and this is a Jonathan Casson from Sony, is story or skill building. You know, you're going to get some, you know, you want novel story, you're going to want new story each time. We go back for different movies, or your skill building. Bowling is going to be different, the four of us, or if I go with, you know, my family, or if I go with somebody, you know, I'm getting better as a bowler, and I can do that many times. And I think that, you know, committing to one or the other of those is important, because, you know, a lot of gamers, they skip through the cinematic, right? They don't care about the story. They get me into the game, you know? And so I think committing to skill or story is critical.
Yeah, I think what Rick said about simplicity is really critical. Especially in location-based entertainment. If I go into an experience and have to sit through kind of the orientation before I really get to the experience, as Rick noted, you go into a Chuck E. Cheese and the kids make a beeline to the game and just they're ready to start pressing buttons and pulling triggers and playing and being involved in the experience. So I think the simplicity really goes hand in hand with the repeatability. It's like, hey, this is great. It's a no-brainer. I am going with my family. We want to do something fun. I want to forget about work, and I don't want to have to think. So that's very important, I think, in terms of a success of any attraction.
My dad used to say people lose 10 IQ points when they go out in public. and I think it is a way of sort of saying, like, you're overrun with a lot of things. You just have less bandwidth for you know, learning this new task. You know, you're in an unfamiliar environment. You've got all this other stuff going on, and I think that it's hard to keep that in mind when you're, you know, building something and you've been at it for weeks and months. So, you know it the best. You know.
I think it also plays well from a marketing perspective. You know, it's the simplicity of, you know, here's what this is, here's what we're offering, is another key advantage. If you have to spend too much time explaining what your experience is to an audience,
such a good point.
Yeah, the level of success is going to definitely be impacted.
And this is something we've run into at DreamPark. We can't say it's like anything, right? There is no other mixed reality theme park out there, you know? So we had this with our story rooms before escape rooms. We were like, hey, it's a physical thing. You come, you buy a real ticket, but people didn't even have in their head what an escape room was. And so we were like having to describe in a paragraph what we were doing, which is not great marketing.
I loved your story rooms, Brett.
Thanks, man.
Those had so much potential. I don't know why they're not everywhere now.
You know what's nuts? One of those did $250,000 a year in about 200 square feet, and it's sitting in freaking storage right now, and it is absolutely driving me apoplectic.
Ship it to Springfield.
Maybe actually, let's talk, man.
I'll have share with you on it.
Okay.
Maybe you were just ahead of your time, because now if you look at what some of the brands are doing, you know, the pop up with Stranger Things and some of those that it's again portability, has a unique experience. I think maybe it's evolving. We're seeing much more of that today. You know, you go into malls and stuff like that. You don't see as much of the fixed infrastructure going in. People are going for those experiential things that are more pop-up oriented.
You know, part of our inspiration was just the sheer amount of empty space that's out there. And, you know, and if we were to try to figure out what is a economical way to activate that space, it's hard to do it with atoms. You know, like it's expensive, and atoms are inflexible and expensive. And, you know, so we're like, okay, how, you know, and I think the all the rage of those projection, you know, rooms, you know, was sort of on the same thread of like, hey, we can paint with pixels. You know, that's a really, you know, economical way to take advantage of all this space. You know, our bet is, you know, mixed reality is even more, you know, immersive than those projections, you know, and gives you, to your point, Rick, even more interactivity and control over your experience.
Yep.
So if we're kind of talking about interactivity, where do you see kind of the future going, either for interactivity, but also just more broadly kind of in this space? How do you see it kind of pushing the sector forward? Rick, I'm going to start with you for that one.
Well, fortunately, right now it's going in a great direction, which because everything's getting cheaper to build, partly because of AI, partly because of technology in general, though. It's getting cheaper to build, faster, and more deployable and quicker to change. So we use the Unreal Engine a lot, and it's just amazing what we're able to do with that. You take the AI and the Unreal Engine, and all of a sudden you've got a multi-player experience where everybody can be doing something different. They're all personalized experiences, and it's cheaper than what we were building similar to that 20 years ago, half the price of that. So I'm really excited about the future of that in terms of how we can deploy that, because I think we're used to taking 3 years to build a new product. Sometimes we'll say anywhere between 18 months to 3 years to roll out a new product that's perfected. And now you can do it a lot quicker and easier and faster and change it. Like, for example, we just opened something that I just went into a few days ago, and I said, what if we put a magic staff over in that corner, and we had it so that the player did XYZ and made that staff blow up the whole room in icicles. And we had it working in 3 days. Phenomenal. It would have taken 6 months and numerous meetings and everything to do that before. So, and it's just getting faster, obviously. And to see where it's going, a little scary in terms of where AI is going to take gaming. I think it's going to be a great future, but again, we don't know. It's so unknown how those new technologies will be working together to create things that we've never seen before.
Rick, Genie 3, have you played with this Google tool? Genie 3 is real-time world generation. I mean, literally AI 3D world generation. It's so freaking cool. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And the images it creates are really scary too, because they're so realistic. You're not going to know what's real in the world and what's not when you go to buy something, for example, or design something. But it's great. It's good. I'm all for it. I believe in it. Yes.
You know, the one that I am so excited about is persistent worlds that you can live in for all the time, or day in and day out. You know, like Rick, what does Magic Quest look like overlaid on your whole town? You know, and that you could do it for, you know, there would be 500 hours of adventure, you know, that would take you to the local park, and it would take you into the church, and it would take you into the, you know, the gift store, and the, you know, but each one would have its role in the wizard world, you know. But Mario, you love zombies, and so you've got zombies everywhere, you know, and when you go to the church, it's a zombie infestation, you know. And I think that kind of persistent environment, you know, where people can take on the roles of the characters they love the most, I mean, I just think that's going to be next level.
Well, that's where the best mixed reality comes into that you're working on, is that real world of like a Magic Quest combined with a VR world or an AR world, and combine so that you eventually don't know where one stops and the other one starts.
There's this Netflix Korean show called Memories of Alhambra. And the whole premise, it's sort of like 75% soap opera and 25% amazing sci-fi. And it's right when we get contact lens displays, and there's only one game that exists, and it's overlaid on the streets of Alhambra. And in order to play this game, you go to the church, and this ethereal woman with a guitar gives you your first challenge, and you go to the antique store, but it's secretly the weapons dealer, and that, you know, is across town, and that's where you get your sword, and then you got to go to the park and get into a sword fight with a bad guy, you know, and all that's a virtual world, but it just uses the beautifulness of Alhambra as a city as the backdrop. You know, Disney has to spend $1 gajillion to rebuild, you know, Cars Land. You know, a church is a natural, beautiful thing in the world. It just has terrible game mechanics.
That's true.
I would say that Rick and Brent, two of the things that they had talked about for me, it narrows down to two things. It's repeatability, and how that is so important in terms of generating traffic for any business. It's a crowded space, location-based entertainment. Offerings have basically doubled since 2019. So being able to stand out and having someone wanting to come back and experience it again is very important. And then the other one I think that was talked about is personalization. I think those two things, repeatability and personalization, they kind of go hand in hand. If you can tailor an experience for someone, they're more apt to enjoy it, and then they're more apt to come back. And as Rick noted, with software costs coming down, before, you would have this huge investment, and 5 years of the same type of film that you would show over and over. And today, the cost is much more reasonable. The software side of it, you can change things out, you can customize it, and I think that ultimately is really the future.
Mm-hmm. And frankly, the user expectation at this point, we have to, in order to stay relevant, the competition is so fierce from other entertainment at home and everywhere else. I think in order for us to even have a prayer, we got to keep it changing.
Oh, one thing you might have left out of there, Mario, because that was a good summary, but that we haven't talked about at all, is how we, the three of us, or the four of us, can create experiences at our facilities that they can't get at home. That's so important these days, because there is a heck of a lot they can do at home that you couldn't do 2 years ago and 5 years ago. So it's up to us to always push that envelope to say, hey, you can come back here. The first time you go, wow, okay, how do we play that? But then you want them to realize that that's the only place they can do it. So they got to come back to your place to do it time and time again.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually some really interesting challenge when we're also talking about you've got to make it relatively simple to use across generations, but you also then want to personalize it. You want to make it interactive. You want to make sure people come back. Some of those things are a little bit contradictory. How can you make it easy enough for people to use, but interesting enough that people are going to want to come back? How can you make it simple to use and personalized, but also attractive to a wide range of people? So I think there are some really conflicting ideas that you have to solve, and you may not have full answers for me because I know that that's quite a challenging thing, but how do you all cope with those contradictions?
Well, I mean, Alice, you just so nailed it. And where the rubber hits the road is it's more expensive. It's one thing to make something that's fun for somebody the first time that they do it. It's an entirely harder thing to make it fun the second time they do it. And so oftentimes I think in LBE folks just out of necessity focus on the first time only, and the second sort of gets short shrift. But it takes real focus and dedication to make the second.
Well, the level strategy of basic video games, and I don't know, it probably goes beyond video games, even board games. If they start out with very simple scenarios that you can easily master, and then you just go up a level. Probably Dungeons and Dragons was the best at that, although it was still hard to start. But once you got started, you couldn't wait to come back and for your character to live a different life, to kind of grow up within you mentally grow up, and your character can grow up within the scenarios that you're playing if it's done right. And it's hard to really level things up like that, but the basic mechanics is there for us to use if we know the right way to use it. So you can start out simple, next time it's a little harder, and then you become a master. What we've noticed about some of the best games we've done is how kids who've already mastered the game will help beginners that are complete strangers. And sometimes it'll be a kid walking up to another kid and saying, how did you do that? He says, oh, well, you got to go over here first, and you go over here, then you do that, then you do this. And then all of a sudden they're friends working together in the game. So you can do that with kind of design it so if people are with each other, they can do that themselves. But you can also kind of get that yourself. If you just want to be a lone player or a casual gamer, make the game simple enough so they can level themselves up. There's just lots of opportunities there if we take advantage of them.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's that, those curves of basically, frustration and boredom, like too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get frustrated. You want to be sort of right in that middle. Yep. And that keeps going as you get more skills. You're trying to stay in that middle zone.
Oh, that's exactly right. That's the key. That's a success. And it seems like it should be an easy curve to master, but it's not, because we're always doing new stuff. And every new thing, what you think is cool, I've spent so much time designing this thing that I think is really cool, and then the guest doesn't think it's cool. They think something that you spent 5 minutes on is way cooler than the thing you spent 5 weeks on. Geez.
It's so hard to know in advance too which one is which, Rick. You know,
Yeah.
and if you knew, you wouldn't have put the 5 weeks in. You know, and it's like, I think the angle there is bringing new eyes in as often as possible. And I think, Alice, this is to your point of like how to shorten those cycles and how to make that, you know, is that with AI making it faster to create, the faster you can get it in front of someone to get their feedback and see, wow, this is the thing that resonates. We spent a bunch of time hand wringing on something that didn't even matter, you know. And I think the more you can get those new eyes, because everybody else who's seen it once is no longer a fresh perspective, you know, and you sort of really have to like cultivate and harvest more new bodies as much as you possibly can, because you run out of fresh eyes so fast.
Absolutely right.
And then, Mario, if we're talking about this idea of kind of repeatability and how important that is, but also giving people an experience that they can't get at home, how do you manage those challenges, and how do you get people to kind of come back time and time again? Because, you know, you're in quite a fixed location with an arcade.
Yeah, you know, in terms, I would say kind of the main experience of a traditional Chuck E. Cheese location, and in that scenario where you think about the experience, it's the storytelling, it's the IP, and being able to leverage that, not just for the time that they're, you know, that 90 minutes or 2 hours that they're in a Chuck E. Cheese, but experiencing a birthday party or playing games, but it really is then hitting them when they're outside of the location. So we really have focused on leveraging the IP. You know, recently just launched the new Christmas special. We're on YouTube. We're on a number of dedicated streaming services. And so we can really take that experience beyond just coming to a Chuck E. Cheese location. It's resonating with them, you know, 24/7. Yeah, they have the opportunity to engage with us. So by having that type of connection, you know, that's how we're building and trying to get that repeatability in creating that experience, that tie-in with the guests to get them to come back. We're also, you know, one of the things that we focus on is membership programs and pass programs. That itself kind of locks them in and gets them to come back more often. So, you know, there's no silver bullet. You know, it really is kind of looking at the landscape, understanding your guests, and then really knowing, we do a lot of surveying, how to engage with them, what's going to work, and then just really focusing on those key pillars.
Mario, I think you guys also, Chucky has the potential for, you know, being a tradition, you know, I mean, transitioning into that hallowed air, you know, where you become part of the family's regular events, you know, I mean, whether it's birthdays or a Sunday out with dad, or, you know, I mean, I think you guys have that potential, especially that age group. You know, I've got young kids now, and seeing how much they prefer a regular tradition to a trip to Disneyland, you know, I mean, like, you know, sprinkles on pancakes every Saturday is so much more captivating than the idea of a single major trip, you know, and I think that is a real shift for that age group, that young, you know, sort of 2 to 6.
You hit the nail on the head there, because when we launched, you know, like, why your first foray into kind of the small screen in terms of a streaming special, why was it a Christmas special of all things, right? It's really tradition.
Yeah.
And cool. If you think about the programming out there and the TV shows that people are watching today around Christmas, they are decades old. You know, they were really built on tradition. Rudolph was built on tradition. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons that was our first foray into, you know, the streaming type of small screen experience. Genius. Is really to build on that tradition.
I love it. I think back to my growing up. I mean, the things that I remember the most was like Sundays going to ramen noodles with my dad and Fry's Electronics. You know, I mean, it wasn't the big stuff. You know, it was just like the regular little stuff that was awesome. Yeah.
So I think we've had a really interesting kind of talk about, you know, what the trends are, what the future's going to look like. But I think it's important to also talk about challenges that you're all facing. So Brent, what is kind of your biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment?
Oh man. What is our biggest challenge? We are a small team. We are it's a new company. We raised money last year. I had it on Shark Tank, in April, beginning of this year. I had it in Shark Tank in April. And so we just have 1 million things that we should be focusing on, and fewer people then can address all those things. And that's startup life. I'm always trying to take off hats and give them to other people. We have crossed onto what I consider 1.0, which is, the fundamental bugs are gone. The experience works. It is a ticketable attraction. We're selling to customers. So that part is a huge threshold. I mean, that was literally IAPA for us, in November. The big challenges, that repeat visitation, we want to have enough content to be exciting for people to be repeat, as well as making that first experience amazing, and we're very focused on getting that first one to be amazing, but you sort of want to be able to sell people at the moment that they have your first experience that there's other cool stuff that's right around the corner, they should come back. And so we've got to really, walk that tightrope. And then locations, we want more and more locations. We've got a whole SDK for third parties to third-party developers to build, and it's only exciting for them as we're out in lots more locations. And so for us, we want to be in a lot more. We're already across the country. We got Long Island opening right now, and other fun ones coming. But the more we can get, the bigger we can expand that footprint, kind of Metcalfe's law of networks, the value of a network is so much more with the more nodes you get on it. And so we really want more locations to get that more valuable.
And then Rick, what are your biggest challenges at the moment?
Well, at the risk of sounding trite, tariffs.
Yeah.
Because the high technology that we're using in general isn't made in the U.S. So it makes it very difficult to set prices and determine how we're going to build out things in the future and what our schedule is for it, what our costs are for it. So we hope that calms down. The second thing that's kind of tied to that is, the economy seems to be slowing a bit. Consumer spending on the low end, medium to low end is definitely going down. Hopefully that's short-lived, because in order to continue what we do, which is to innovate and create new stuff, consumer spending has to be there to support that. Otherwise, R&D dies. If the facilities that are there have a hard time making it, new facilities have twice a harder time making it. And if we want to keep innovation and new ideas generated, created, and make them profitable, we got to make sure that consumer spending is there. I'm not too concerned about either one of those. They're actually kind of similar problems in what we've had in the past, and I think they're surmountable. But that's kind of where I would put the main challenges today.
And Mario, what challenges are you facing?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it previously. The competitive landscape certainly has grown and is there's a lot in the hopper, so you're going to see a lot of competition on a go forward basis. So it really keeps us on our toes. We have to focus on how to leverage our capital expenditures to ensure we're getting the biggest bang for the buck. Innovation is very important, and when you talk about all the things that we're doing, it's because we realize to stay ahead of the competition, you really have to continue to innovate. You just can't sit on your hands. So I think that's one key thing. And for us too, I think Brent noted it, is just space. There's this unique change, specifically in the United States, with the shift in people going to malls and the surrounding retail areas and traffic patterns. In being able to get flexible space and to facilitate growth, that is a challenge, and will probably continue to be a challenge. There's not a lot of growth in that sector, so it's more competitive to try to find the right locations for location-based entertainment. at reasonable prices. So I think those are kind of the two factors that always come up or always on our mind as we're looking at the future.
I just love that like innovation is like so at the forefront of kind of everyone's mind, and that actually like, yes, there are challenges with that, but I love that, you know, that's one of the really important things that you're all working on, is how can you make the industry more innovative? How can you give people better experiences? I think that's really fantastic. So Brent, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, I think on that, you know, sort of drafting on what Mario was saying, I think that as that competition gets fiercer, you know, what we've seen in the music industry is that like the big tours, the era tours, you know, those you get people out, but that middle tier is hollowing out, and there's a low end that people will go to their local dive bar for music. They'll go to the Eras tour, but the sort of mid tier is hollowing. And I wonder if similarly for us, the sort of, you know, LBE, the big ticket, high production value, you know, let's plan our you know, many months around this thing versus you know, the stuff that you might do, you know, every week, every month, you know, where to sort of fight it out. You know, are you fighting it out in the premium? This is the thing I'm going to do once or twice a year. You know, are you fighting it out in the you know, in the monthly? And I think people have different expectations.
Absolutely.
Well put. Yep.
Well, we are just about out of time, but this has been such a great conversation. So Mario, Brent, and Rick, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating, and hopefully has inspired everyone else to kind of keep innovating and, you know, also create nice, easy kind of gaming environments for me. I would appreciate that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, we want to come play what you build. You know, let's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are going to announce the winners of our Game On category next. So thank you to everyone for watching and joining us today. Mario, Rick, and Brent, thank you so much for your insights. It's been fascinating. So stay tuned, everyone, and thank you. And now the winners of the Blue Loop Innovation Awards 2025 Game On category. Third place, Arcade Battle Experience from Beat the Bomb. Second place, Pac-Man Live Experience from Little Lion Entertainment. First place, Ferrari Wild Esports Arena from Miral Destinations. Congratulations to all of the winners.